and justify to yourself that the effort you're going to put in, which will be 5 years or 10 years or maybe even longer, is worth it. And if you do that thinking you find out it isn't worth it, you're going to save yourself 5 or 10 or 15 years of work, because then now you can go and do something else. Investors need that. They need to do that thinking. What am I investing in here is a question for the future. And the present just gives you some clues. The more clues you can give us about what the future looks like with you, the easier it is for us to assess.
Thank you, Keith. Scott? Scott, do you have final thoughts? You're mute.
Scott has to unmute himself. That's right. I think James nailed it, right? And Keith has given some very sage advice. So between the two of them, there's nothing more for me to say.
Okay.
I'll just add one other thing. You know, I mean, you know, this is a personal preference more than, you know, maybe other investors might see. But I love it when you talk about what's going on in the bigger world around you. And, you know, the idea that things are changing and that, you know, it's inevitable that things are going to change, and the change is going to mean that what you are doing is more necessary than ever. And so, you know, the question then becomes, do you want to come along with me, or do you not want to come along with me because the world is moving towards me on its own? And so, you know, you need to talk about, you know, why education needs you know, this additional, you know, tutoring or whatever you want to call it. And, you know, why consumers don't need to just go to the bank like they've always done. And, you know, why micro brands might need to use AI. I mean, all of those things invite a story about the world is changing. And, you know, there's a promised land out there where if you had our solution, life would be easier. But without our solution, you can't get to the promised land. You know, we often think about the idea of, you know, you might not use it, but, you know, the bridge that goes over the river and there's a troll under the bridge. And if you don't have me trying to get across the bridge, you're not going to make it. But if you have me, you know, we're the sword or we're whatever that gets you across the bridge. And so, you know, I would, if you can frame it in such a way to talk about what's going on in the world that makes it inevitable that a solution like you needs to be had.
I call that inevitable trends. It's what puts wind in your sails. Because if you have a ship and the only thing making it go forward is you, there's no wind in your sails, it's a lot harder. What is the wind in your sails?
Yeah, we always like to say, you know, this is going to happen with whether you believe it or not, you know, and so the question is only, does the investor believe it's going to happen or do they not? But, you know, I believe this is going to happen, and that's why this solution solves the problem. And the problem could be a problem of today, or it could be a problem that is coming, that is not here yet, but having your solution means you can avoid the problem. You know, if we could have had you know, if you had tried to sell a COVID vaccine 2 years ago and said, hey, I've invented this vaccine for this pandemic that might arise someday, everybody would have said, are you crazy? We don't need this. But if you had the vaccine today, you'd be a billionaire. And so, you know, if you could say to somebody today, you know, this problem is coming down the line and our solution is going to prevent it, not just solve it, but we could also prevent a problem. You know, that's very compelling, especially in today's day and age when everybody knows what happens when you're not prepared.
It's worth saying the mathematics underneath that are really simple. There's an absolute prize measured in dollars, and there's a rate of growth. And the virus vaccine would have a huge absolute value, and the rate of growth would be thousands of % per day. So if you have a product where the absolute dollar value and the rate of growth over 10 years or more can be 100% a year or greater, then you have a very, very big future. But if your dollar value is low and your rate of growth is 10% a year, you don't have a great future. So